Big boy waterfall shower. Y'all got big boy vaulted ceilings. Big boy
Yeah,
foyer.
you mind if I bring my shorty over
Big boy
here?
crawl space. Big boy school district.
Ed, after that OPEC Plus meeting, we just got the headline that UBS has now raised its Brent forecast to a $90 to $100 range. You're still at 79 for this quarter, moving lower throughout the year. If OPEC Plus maintains this kind of discipline on the supply side, how much upside risk is there to that view?
Well, I think you guys, I think maybe you, for what you're doing, you at least have a reason to have a finger in the pinky finger in the oil market, hon. I'll give you that. You're working a crank.
But they are increasing it by more than 250,000 barrels a day per month. You stretch that across the 12 months of this year, and that's an increase of 3 million barrels a day of production.
As much as I'm not of the $100 crude camp, I'm less of the $120 crude camp.
3 million barrels a day is a lot. We think there's going to be a good 3 million coming from non-OPEC countries as well.
When I think about it across the board, if you actually wanted to do the influx to go green, what's the margin? What's the margin to hold that like Fed taper every quarter? Gonna catches do. So some Robin Hood steps up in the long game of this and redesigns the Fed.
About what is being said that's being done and what is actually being done. Russia hasn't made its targets for the last few months.
Russia has
It's anything that squeaks in front of me. I don't care what color, race, age. Well, I mean, unless you're hanging with sharps, he'll shoot the little girl with the bread basket, but that's a whole different other animal tracking a photon through a water bottle.
So they are not far from doing what they have to do. It's not much different from the Saudi compliance record. It is a very different story from, say, Kazakhstan on the one hand, which is overproducing tremendously, or Nigeria on the other hand, which is barely able to do anything other than see production decline. OPEC countries vary in what they can do. Russia, in particular, had shut down.
Like I said, the part of being in charge of certain units is to give you a horizon, no matter what's in the horizon of the squeaky over there. Even if it wasn't my detail, I pat one on the back. You got this. I'm running over here to put my finger in this hole for a little bit. Call Dave. Call Dave. Set the pipe pillar on fire. Let it go. Yep. Send it. That's the thing.
We ought to look at the bigger picture rather than just what's happened in the last month. And this month, they claim that they're actually on target for what they're supposed to be producing.
Boss, come down there. Wait a minute, the stock margins. If you do not get off my oil field as of right the hell now.
Exxon plans to boost Permian output by 25% this year. For Chevron, something like 10%. How do you factor shale into this equation?
Shale is
PE ratios, my fixed income ain't working, boss. You work harder.
Producing at the beginning of 2020 until the end of this year. So that means that
next thing you know, I would say they unionize like Starbucks, but I'd assume you're sitting pretty good in the manner. Because Solomon's Dragon waiting for him to say something dumb. God, step up.
We lost 3 years worth of production in effect.
It's my moment. This is always yours. It was yours, Mason Robot. It was.
When we see these corporate reports coming in for the last quarter of the year and projections for this year, we're seeing an estimated increase in capital spending.
Slip, trips, and falls if I got in your way, right? You know the game.
Some people think that maybe that's countered by inflation. We don't think inflation in the oil industry is anywhere near.
This is an experiment in gravity out here, don't you see it?
So we have calculated about 1.3 million at a minimum of liquid production coming out of the U.S. this year versus last year. About 800,000 a day of that coming from
hit this button right here. This button right here.
Gas liquids, and with these new reports on increased capital spending and a movement away from the so-called discipline that Wall Street had applauded, and now Wall Street
wants to ground as hard as you want.
I mean,
honestly,
we think our estimates for U.S. production:
silver mine, copper mine, pit mines, wells, different types of wells.
Why is domestic production
with the tip of the bit, top of the mountain, right? I mean,
it's down 300,000
reciprocal wave functions on some board meeting or trainee rookie or boss manager overdoing the food on this thing some way or shape or form of the difference. And the crews make another one. If they're not doing that, they learn to eventually evolve into a maintenance guy for the rig. And eventually, after those two things trigger over, somebody screws up at some board meeting out in Texas, and that's how they do it out there on the bull farm. And well, now that one's in charge. And we were like, move.
last month. And
No.
expected to be 5 million a day this month. So I think it's noise. And
Keep it
the
normal,
weather is
please.
part of
And the
the demand
food, those
story,
dudes
and
really
it's
start
also
to do.
part
I
of
mean,
what's
and again,
happening
that's your
in
base
sales
guy.
at the moment.
And then it's
So,
like, okay,
but
so
once
my
we
base
get
guy's
past
bitching.
this,
I imagine the federal
and we have
government
to
running
remind
at
ourselves
15
we had
below
an
for the labor
enormous
crew, let
freeze-off
alone
last
anything in the
February,
restaurant that
which,
they're buying food
shut
off
in
of, right?
production, caused
So you
natural
boys
gas
be real
prices
sweet,
to
young lady, right?
skyrocket
You
in
know,
the
you
United States.
try to take care of that in the
Oil was
region,
buffered
do
by
at
the
least
oversupply
the
and high
percentage that comes
inventories.
with a regular
This
tip.
year
I
it's
appreciate.
not. So the inventory situation kind of exaggerates that for the high frequency data in the U.S., but it's really quite temporary compared to where the rig count is, which points to a much more robust production future.
So I'll drop you on top of the
Ed,
stone mill and tell you to
final
mine
question.
rock.
My good friend and colleague Emery Hodern breaking a story out of DC.
Well, they'd be happy to have you.
Washington
Probably looking for a
and
laborer
European
right now.
capitals are talking
And it wouldn't
China
matter
to
if you had a
to range
PhD
of
or come from
countries
Nancy Pelosi.
about
Everybody starts
potentially
on the
providing
hill.
gas to Europe were there to be an invasion of Ukraine. What is your assessment of the situation? How realistic would such a plan be? And how
You do it
exposed
simply.
is Europe
You'd
right
say,
now
oh,
to
so
such a
you're one of
crunch?
those guys. Here's a skid steer.
Europe
What do you mean?
is
I'm never
exposed
going to
to
touch that
such
my
a
whole life.
crunch,
I know,
yes,
but if
the
you don't get in
capitals
here,
are doing what they
about to
can
be a
to
cage fight
secure
out here,
additional
so I
supplies
suggest you
of
hop your
LNG
ass in that
to get
machine.
into the European market. And
You
they're
start running the
succeeding by and
roster or
large, and they're
whatever
succeeding
your
why? Because
big
China,
game
which had
Savari
gobbled
starts
up
to
all
put
of the
out there,
remaining
even if you're from the
available
phone,
LNG
engine
once
one,
they
calling
ran into
asking about
power
where the light
generation
switch
problems
is.
last September,
Fire
is now
exits around there.
releasing
Just to
those
make sure
cargoes.
your
We're
people
seeing
over there have one of
tremendous
those, because
movement
hell, that
from
might save you $1 million.
They can probably
100
get
people's
by if
lives.
there is a crunch. We estimate that there probably won't be a crunch. When we look at Russian exports, it's an intriguing situation because, yes, Ukraine is one thing, and they've limited supplies through Ukraine. They've not limited supplies through the other 4 pipelines, and it's not in their interest. It's in their interest to behave as they have been historically.
$5 still on the same metric as that other danger noodle pictures you had out there? Snake the dog the river.
Getting into Europe to cut their market share. So I think it's a lowish
I mean, you would
probability,
figure
but
natural
there
gas
is a
should be
buffer
out there where
that's
crude
being
is.
worked
Why is
out,
one of
through
those
the
sitting
LNG
at
market
5
through
unless it's a
Qatar,
brand new company?
and through the U.S. incremental
I mean, you
supply
could
of
say
LNG.
block or eat through them, but
America's
why?
most reliable network is going
Make it more
ultra.
confusing?
With Verizon 5G
Get out of the
ultra
main
wideband
index
now
off
in
the
many
herd,
more
you get
cities.
clipped.
Hey, it's Mindy. Downloading a movie up to 10 times